Hey guys, Shopbox here. Shadowlands is coming out in just under a month, and Resto Shaman is looking really strong. Is what I would have said 3 days ago. However, Blizzard has recently announced that they are actually going to be delaying the release of Shadowlands. This is a good change, just because on beta, the game just hasn't felt ready yet. But this video isn't about that. This video is going to be talking about the changes coming to Resto Shaman, class-wise, and how I feel about that, and if I felt that they got the attention they deserve. So jumping right into it, we're going to start with the unpruning of abilities, and we're going to start with my actual favorite one, which is Untitled Totem is coming back. This is easily the best part of the unpruning that they've done. It's a really good piece of utility, giving not only yourself but other healers extra mana regen when you drop it, and it actually encourages bringing multiple Resto Shamans. Now, I don't think you would ever be taking like 3 or 4 at once, but currently on the beta, Untitled Totem actually is stacking with other Resto Shamans totems. So, like for example, you start with 2,000 base regen. When you pop it, you get 4,000. But if a second Resto Shaman also drops theirs, it goes to 8,000. Now, it's hard to say for sure if this is going to make it to live or if it's something they're going to change later. But we've known about this for several months now, and it still has managed to stay in the game. So if it does, it just encourages like the level of bringing one Resto Shaman is here, and there's actually a benefit to bringing 2 as opposed to it staying static or slightly lower. Next up on the list is actually going to be Water Shield. So this, it's not really impactful. You know, it's just a buff you throw on yourself. You get a little bit extra mana regen. It works out being like 2.5% boost to your mana regen. It does have the added effect in PvP is really where it's going to be more, you're going to see more of it, is getting that 2% of your mana on melee hit. That doesn't really happen in Mythic Plus or in Raid, so not really a big use for PvE there, but overall, it's still just a slight extra bit of mana regen. I'm not going to complain about it. The third one up on the unproving list is going to be Earth Shield. I'm happy with this. It used to be a talent, and for PvE purposes, it was almost never taken. There were some opportunities for Mythic Plus if you were really struggling with tank healing that you could take it, but overall, the Echo of Elements is in that tier. Pretty much always want it for almost every single scenario. So Earth Shield was just really unpopular. By them making this baseline, it is helping us with our single target healing on tanks, Mythic Plus, which has been one of our weakest points. So overall, you know, I'm happy it's baseline. Happy we have it back. And that's actually going to wrap it up for the healing specific unpruning spells. Everything else is going to be more DPS related, but I figured it was still worth going over. So next one, fourth on the list, is Lightning Shield. This is okay. It's nothing amazing, you know. It's just gonna add some damage, basically reflected to melee attackers. This is good if you're doing solo content in Resto, so maybe you're doing a Torghast run in Resto, that you'll actually be wanting to use Lightning Shield. It's not going to be a big portion of your damage, but it's still going to be a bit. That, or if you're doing world content leveling as Resto, if you choose to do that, you will at least have a use for it. I would have actually liked to see, maybe it does a little bit more damage, and I say that because in PvP, it could actually have a really cool playstyle where maybe you're the target being focused by the enemies, And now you choose, like, okay, do I Earth Shield myself for, like, defensively? Do I Lightning Shield myself and actually have that flip offensively? If it was doing more damage than it is right now, it would actually be a really good kind of, like, counter pressure to that. But as it stands right now, it does still have, like, an internal cooldown for triggering on somebody. So I think after 30 seconds of, like, either auto-attacking or an enhanced shaman hitting me, traditionally has more auto-attacks and whatnot, both times after 30 seconds, I had reflected about 2% of their health worth of damage. So that kind of indicates that it still has that internal cooldown, and I just feel like 30 seconds... it only did 2% of their health. It just doesn't seem like quite enough that it would encourage that kind of playstyle in PvP. But again, it will still at least have some place, unlike the other two on this list, which I'm gonna actually clump together. It's gonna be Primal Strike and Flametongue. These are actually abilities you will never press. Don't have them on your bar. There is zero situation outside of maybe within the first 10 levels of you playing, you might press them, but even then, looking at the numbers, it doesn't make sense. But I'm gonna start by talking about Primal Strike, and it's just such a useless ability. So it costs 940 mana, and it deals 100 damage. We're gonna compare it to Frost Shock, which costs 100 mana, and surprisingly does 943 damage, which basically it just feels like their damage and mana was swapped. Obviously, that's not exactly how it worked, because Primal Strike actually, the damage scales off of weapon damage, but there's just no situation. If you ever found yourself thinking, maybe I should use Primal Strike here, you'll just hit Frost Shock. It has no cooldown. It is 9 times cheaper, and it does 9 times the damage. It's just... there's never a point where you'll want to hit Primal Strike. It's ridiculous that it was added in, and it's weird because Enhance doesn't actually get Primal Strike. Only Ellie and Resto have Primal Strike, and those are both specs that you just would never press it. I have no idea why Blizzard thought this was a good idea to put in, because it's just useless. Yeah, so the other part in this talking point is Flametongue weapon. Now, this one I at least Enhance uses it, and it's actually decent for Enhance, you know? So that's fine, but it does 14 damage. When you get this when leveling, it does 1 damage. So between, like, level 7 or whenever you get it and max level, it does 13 additional damage. Because you're already, like, right. It only applies on melee attacks. It doesn't actually increase the damage of, like, a flame shock or a lava burst or something like that. It's only on melee attack, which you are never doing as a caster. But additionally, with Shadowlands, they're bringing back weapon oils. And if you use Flametongue weapon, you can't use a weapon oil. And again, that just makes it even more useless, because the weapon oils, there are effects that, you know, they're not, like, crazy big effects, like, it's not going to be a large portion of your throughput or anything, but it's better than 14 damage on a melee hit. So a couple of things I would have liked to see different here is either one, and I actually think this would be my preferred option, if they reworked how Flametongue weapon worked. Maybe they could make it so at the bare minimum it does more damage and it actually applies to spells. Maybe have it so it fires an additional spell at an enemy with Flametongue, or with Flame Shock on it. So suddenly you could be DPSing from your healing. There's other specs. There's Disc Priest, Holy Paladin, where they DPS to do more healing. I think it'd be cool to have a counter to that. The more healing you're doing, the more DPS you do. And I'm not saying it needs to do crazy amounts of anything, but that would just kind of help, you know, put Resto Shamans back in a place where we have some... We don't have to pick between DPSing or healing. We can do a little bit of both. And again, also having it tie off of Flame Shock, it still means you want to be throwing those out, and it has some synergy with that. The other option would be if they felt okay with bringing back weapon enchants, why wouldn't they maybe bring back Earth Living weapon? I know we technically have part of it in Unleash Life. That was like the Unleash effects. I think it was added in, I want to say, Cataclysm. But, like, at least give us Earth Living weapon back and then just have it so our heals have a chance to heal a little bit. Or something like that. Like, something that at least makes sense and would be worth using. As it stands right now, Primal Strike and Flametongue, they unpruned it, but they will never be used, so there's like no reason that that they should have even bothered giving it to us. Now that's technically all of the things that were unpruned. I am going to talk about one other. This was a spell that was originally going to be unpruned, or it was unpruned, and then repruned, which is Searing Totem. I'm super disappointed that they repruned it. Basically, early into beta, it was available for all of the specs, and Enhanced Shamans and Ally Shamans were like, yeah, you know, it's just a button we press and it does damage on its own, like it's not interesting. And to them, I say fair enough. You know, I understand not wanting that ability because it's not really anything interesting. But I would have really liked it if Resto could still have it. Because, again, and this is going to be brought up a few more times, just like the damage we can do while we're healing, it's very low. Like, outside of throwing Flame Shocks out, like that's it. Everything else we have to consciously decide, am I DPSing here or am I healing? So this would have just been like a nice additional tool to have to give us just a little bit more passive damage. And like with Igneous Potential leaving, that had really kind of given Resto Shamans a place where, you know, we could actually do like really good single target damage if we wanted to, and like the battle Resto Shaman kind of that build came light. We're losing Igneous Potential, and I just feel like this could have helped begin to fill the gap, but with Igneous Potential going away, Searing Totem would have helped us keep that identity of the healer good at single target DPS. I understand, again, why the other specs didn't want it, but it still would have been nice to have for Resto. But that's going to actually wrap that up, and I'm going to move over to the talent changes now. There wasn't a lot of talent changes, really only 2. And again, I'm going to go back to a bit more positive note here, and start off with High Tide. So basically, if you were to just compare this to live, you would look at it and be like, oh, they nerfed High Tide. Why is that a good thing? So what they actually did was they they took some of the power out of High Tide and they just put it into Chain Heal. So the spell power scaling effects for Chain Heal was increased a little bit. So though High Tide itself, those procs are a little less powerful. Rather than 20%, they're only 10%. Your Chain Heals are already... they're going to be doing a little bit more than they used to. And by doing this, it actually opens up the last row of talents. Basically, throughout most of BFA, it was really, like for Raid, it was High Tide. You know, some people would take Wellspring for some, for like some parses or whatnot, but it was never a super popular pick. And Ascendance did see some play. A lot of it would have been either PvP or in Mythic Plus. But now in Raid, as it stands right now with the current balancing, all of these are looking to be viable options for Raid. And that's a really good thing. I still think Wellspring is probably going to be like the lowest out of the three. Generally, early tiers are really revolving around proper cooldown management. And with Ascendance kind of being more viable, I could actually see a place where Ascendance is more often the play. But yeah, overall, they handled High Tide right. They didn't nerf it into the ground. You know, it's still really good. It's that the big part here now is it doesn't reduce with each jump. They left that in, so it's still a good pick. It's just a little bit weak. So the other talent change they brought in was, obviously, they got rid of Earth Shield being a talent, so they needed to fill it with something. And we got Surge of Earth. I'll just read it off. Consumes up to 3 charges of Earth Shield to heal 6 allies within your near your Earth Shield target, or 605 per charge consumed. This is such a disappointment. I'm really... Blizzard just completely ruined a good opportunity to really help us shore up one of our biggest weaknesses in Mythic Plus, which is we don't have a tank CD. We have Spirit Link, and it does have a DR effect, but it's on a very short amount of time it's on. And the amount of times you Spirit Link and people run out, or, you know, if there's not a lot of people in melee, it's not an amazing cooldown. For Mythic Plus specifically. But this is just... okay, it's disappointing. Basically, the healing it produces is comparable to a chain heal, only this is on a 20-second cooldown. I will say, you know, it only costs 1,000 mana, so it's a little more mana efficient, but it also is up to 6 nearby allies, which means if you take this in Mythic Plus, you're never going to be able to get the full benefit of it, so it's now being less efficient. So it's really targeted to more of a raid environment, which my argument there is, I mean, one, Echo of Elements, it's not going to beat that out. But even, let's pretend Echo doesn't exist, and it's between Deluge and Surge of Earth. They both require people to be relatively stacked up to get good use out of it, and I don't see how Surge of Earth would beat Deluge. It's just 20% additional healing from like your chain heal or whatnot. You have people stand in your healing rain, they're all getting this benefit. It doesn't make sense to pick between these two. And the other thing is, so they introduced a spell that focuses on our AoE healing. We have 2 other talents that try to do that in Downpour and Wellspring. Pretty much neither of them are ever taken. Sometimes Wellspring is, but really not that often. And we already have great like stacked AoE healing. Why are they trying to give us a third ability to work with that? We do it just fine without any of them. So bringing a third one in, it annoys me. It interacts with Earthshield. It would have made sense to have a tank CD that interacts with Earthshield instead. But yeah, so the other thing, if you say you ignored Deluge as well and you went to take it into a raid setting, you're also just going to be wasting globals having to reapply Earthshield. It using charges, like, yeah, it's an instant cast, and so that's great, but you're also going to be losing globals reapplying. And even worse, say, like, you normally want Earthshield on a tank. Say tanks are tanking the boss on one side, everyone's stacked up on the other side. You want to use that, you now have to reapply Earthshield to somebody else first, and then use Surge of Earth. So, yes, you could say, no, you want to know what, I'm going to keep it on, like, a raider who's always going to be stacked up, and then I'll just use it for AoE healing. But now you're just completely missing out on Earthshield's, like, passive healing on tanks or whatnot. And it's just, it's a bad spell. I don't like it, and I'm really disappointed that I made this. But... right, so let's say also Blizzard really doesn't want to give us a tank CD. They are adamant about that, and holy, Blizzard has really been, they like to be stuck in their ways and go all out when they have an idea. At least give it, like, a damaging effect as well, you know? Like, when I read this ability, I just kind of imagine, like, an explosion of earth going out around and it heals allies. Maybe have it so it also damages enemies. If it damaged enemies, that actually would potentially give it a spot in Mythic Plus. And again, I know I keep coming back to, like, oh, why don't we, like, weave some damage into here? I'm not suggesting that every time I say we should deal damage with this, that we need all of them. Just showing that there's so many opportunities to introduce it. So that is going to wrap up the actual talent changes that are coming in. But I'm going to quickly talk about a few other changes I would have liked to have seen, but that they didn't do. And the first one is going to be, why isn't Echo of Elements baseline? We have been taking this as default for so long. They even made a legendary in Legion that gave us Echo of Elements so we could pick something else. It's good, and I don't want them to, like, nerf it or make it bad. Like, it's our only one. It's our only pick that actually increases the damage we can do. It giving us an extra charge of Cloudburst, like, it synergizes with that really well, and it gives us more freedom to use Cloudburst. We're not going to feel like we're wasting a charge by holding on to it. And it's been default for so long. Just give it to us baseline and put something else in. The other thing I would have liked to have seen, and again, sorry, bringing up DPS, it would have been cool if they added a damage element to Wellspring, because that would then give it a very clear place. It'd be great in Mythic Plus. It'd give us some AoE damage, which, I mean, our damage caps out at 3 targets. That's it. And just having something that can do a little bit more AoE damage would have been nice. It would have made Wellspring a lot more popular. Maybe even potentially seeing some play in Raid if it just adds passive damage. Since it's already occasionally taken in Raid and High Tide isn't as dominant, that would bring it up a bit without making it, like, too strong healing-wise, but still bringing it up and making it a more favorable pick. I think that would have been cool. Again, I'm not saying all of the times I said they should add damage here. I don't think we should have all of it, but, you know, maybe 1 or 2 just to kind of help out. But with that, I'm gonna kind of move on to the closing thoughts. I know you might be thinking, okay, but what about legendaries and covenant abilities? I already have a video talking about legendaries. I will talk a little bit just about how the spec feels. And covenant abilities just feels like that should be its own video, so I do plan on making that in the future. But closing thought is, how do these changes actually affect us? And the reality is, the changes do very little for changing our playstyle. They don't change our playstyle. There are a few legendaries that do introduce a little bit of difference. The biggest one is going to be Chains of Devastation. That in Mythic Plus is actually really fun. The bouncing between Chain Heal and Chain Lightning, I really like it. And I will, that's what the one legendary I'll really talk about is that does add a new kind of play style for Mythic Plus. But the only other thing introduced that really changes or adds like a playstyle is in Covenants, and that is actually going to be Primordial Wave. Now, this is the part of the video where I was going to talk about Maldraxxus a little bit, and how much I like the gameplay, and how it's actually looking like it's going to be a good pick and raid. It might still be the case, however, there have been some nerfs to Primordial Wave over the last couple of days, so I'm going to hold off on that, do a little bit more testing with the Covenants, and then I'll talk about the Covenants in an upcoming video. Overall, do I think Resto Shamans got the attention that they deserved? No. Did get some good changes, again, Untitled Totem being the best one by far. The reality is, over half of the changes we were given either were reverted or are useless in their current form. Hopefully they do some reworking to Surge of Earth. That would be cool if they could do something with that. But I feel like Resto Shaman just needed a little bit more. We haven't seen anything that really changes our playstyle in a while. And though they did do that with some of the legendaries for Mythic Plus and Primordial Wave if it ends up being good. But overall, I wish they would have done more. But that's going to wrap things up for this video. If you made it this far and enjoyed it, why not consider subscribing to the channel or checking me out on Twitch. I normally stream Raid, Beta, or lately Among Us with friends over there, so link will be in the description below. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.